folks, I did something extremely controversial. I sold all of my Tesla stock. So in this video, I'm going to show you how much I made off Tesla stock, and then I'm going to share with you what I'm doing with that capital and where I think you're going to find better returns, because I think there's a part of the market that is much more advantageous right now than the electric vehicle sector. So in the clarity of my transparency and all the homework I do for you guys, do the channel a favor. As always, hit that like button and let's jump right into this. Welcome back, passive income investors alike. Now, many of you are aware that leading into the end of this year, I keep kind of touting that I'm going to be readjusting my portfolio fairly aggressively on quite a few different sectors. Now, I didn't initially plan on selling Tesla, but I kind of was running some metrics, looking at different sectors of the market, and I'm starting to realize that the upside potential for Tesla is just about over, in my humble opinion, at least for the next 5, maybe 10 years, depending on when self-driving becomes a full capability and the government actually regulates it. And again, even with the solar, the battery walls, all that stuff, guys, they're already pricing most of that in to the company here. So I ended up liquidating my Tesla shares. I sold the rest of the 10 shares that I had at $636 for right around an 800% gain. I have profited roughly, not including my initial investment, of just over $30,000 in this company here, guys. Now, being up this much on Tesla might be a little bit different than if you're, say, buying the company today, guys, because I'm looking at it as what is the likelihood that Tesla's going to double my money, quadruple my money, or even 4 or 5x my money over the coming years. And that probability has diminished drastically here, guys, because the likelihood of this company becoming worth, say, as much as Apple, $2 trillion in the next 5 years doesn't seem justifiable when the revenues just aren't there to back it. And if you look at Tesla with its $600 billion market cap, worth twice as much as Procter & Gamble is right now, considering Procter & Gamble's gross profits are sitting right around $36.8 billion against Tesla's something like $5 billion, guys, yet Tesla can be worth twice as much as something as resilient and has been around as long as a Procter & Gamble. I just don't like the risk assessment on the company when I feel like there's going to be way more upside potential in different sectors of the market, which we're going to touch base on in a second here, guys. And just taking a look at my current portfolio, since I scaled out of Tesla, it brought down what I would call my technology weighting, because I kind of put Tesla in that basket next to my Apple and my Microsoft and my Facebook. It has scaled it down to about a 19% weighting, whereas my healthcare sector has drastically exploded to be the largest sector I am now exposed to at 22%, primarily thanks to Johnson & Johnson and obviously MindMed, which leads me into where my focus is moving forward for the growth of my portfolio, which is in the healthcare space. But why healthcare, Kyle? You might be asking yourself, who cares about healthcare right now when there's stuff going on in the EV world and all these evolutions in the renewable sector? Well, the reason the healthcare sector has been, I think it's been widely overlooked and kind of marginalized because people just don't understand the technological revolution that's going on in genome editing and just genetics in general, let alone MindMed, with the capability of tackling some of the largest drug segments that haven't been disrupted in literally 30 to 50 years here. And when you run the math on what these companies are doing, which again has never been capable up till this point, with MindMed being the exception here with what we're about to look at, I honestly think, and Cathie Wood made this assessment as well, that basically the healthcare sector at certain degrees is literally going to outpace FANG stocks probably in the next 5 to 10 years.
Which genes in our genomes have mutated? In other words, they've developed a programming error. And now with CRISPR gene editing, following it up, we're going to be able to correct those programming errors. It's going to be incredible to catch cancer in stage 1 and then edit it away. We think that's going to be possible in the next 5 to 10 years. And probably sooner than that.
When the famous Cathie Wood spoke these words of wisdom from her mouth, I had this mind-opening awakening, considering MindMed was like the gateway drug for me into the healthcare sector. When I realized, running the math behind this stuff that's never really been changed before, it is astronomical, guys. But let me talk about what I'm buying into, basically instead of Tesla. And don't get me wrong, I might even buy back into Tesla if it dips, or I might just buy back into the ARKK, the ARK Innovation ETF, so that way I can get some exposure. But but with a lot more mitigated risk, because again, I believe there is more downside potential than there is upside potential coming in the next 5 to 10 years, which is controversial. You can have your own opinion about that. Where my focus has been driven is in the ARC genomic revolution here, guys. I truly believe some of the capabilities of what Cathie Wood is talking about when we're mentioning companies like CRISPR-Cas9 is going to be so revolutionary. And let me just explain to you what I mean now. Now, the ARC genomic ETF holds roughly 50 companies, and even Google's in there. You're getting a very well diversified portfolio, and I'm smart enough to recognize the revolution that is coming, and I'm also smart enough to recognize that I'm not smart enough to pick the individual companies that are going to dominate this sector. But I do trust Cathie Wood's management, and this is truly the first ETF that I've ever bought in my entire portfolio that I plan on holding for the relative mid to long term, or maybe like the next 5 to 10 years, to see how things evolve here. But taking a look at one of the largest holdings being CRISPR-Cas9, which is genetically editing, claiming that they can even get to the point where they can genetically edit cancer out of your system. And if you don't understand this, like I don't, because I'm not a genius in this space at all, let me just read you some of the marvels that CRISPR's been able to pull off. So they removed HIV from 3 living organisms. They've reversed Huntington's disease in mice. They've engineered algae to produce twice as much biofuel compared to the unmodified algae. They've encoded and played back a video of a galloping horse in living E. coli bacteria. They've edited genetic disease out of human embryonic cells, which is something that I think goes on in China. I mean, we're talking about marvels in a way that has never ever been capable in human history before. So what I am trying to do is not let my ignorance get ahead of me, and I've started by just adding some shares. I got about 16 shares right now in ARCG, which I got kind of frustrated because it was running at like 5% gains day after day after day while I was trying to do my research into this. So I decided to pull the plug to give myself a little bit further conviction, and I bought 16 shares at roughly $1,682 US, and I'm definitely going to be scaling this likely to about a $5,000 or $10,000 position, likely using some of my MyMed profits to continue diversifying, because again, in the healthcare sector, MyMed has made up a large chunk of my portfolio, currently being worth about 15% alone. And my kind of thinking around the healthcare space right now is I want to use MyMed as a pure play. I honestly believe MyMed right now has more upside capability, even after the recent run, than Tesla does right now. And the reason I'm so convicted to that company is I believe that they are going through phase trials with drugs that already have a proven track record. And it is not often you can buy into a drug company with a high degree of certainty that there is going to be a good outcome from these phase trials with these current experiments. Yes, we have to wait a little while. Is it going to be costly? Yes, that is the healthcare space. That is why companies like CRISPR-Cas9 still trade at a $12 billion valuation, when really these companies should be worth anywhere from 50 to 100 billion. I'm still speculating that MyMed should easily be worth somewhere between 20 and 50 billion dollars with the market capability of ADHD, anxiety and depression. Like, these are going to be revolutions in our lifetime that could extend human life expectancy for many more years, guys, when we're talking again about curing cancer, which is a sector that is not only extremely controversial, but kind of garnishes a lot of conspiracies when people think that it's just big drug companies don't want to cure cancer because they make too much money off, you know, all the treatments that they do. And I don't believe that conspiracy. And it's also fascinating that CRISPR, on the forefront of solving these problems, is also headquartered in Switzerland, where they are doing the MyMed psychedelic trials. There's some kind of crossover of interest there that I found very fascinating, very unusual. But putting all of that aside, guys, moving into 2021, the healthcare space is going to be largely my focus for growth in my portfolio. I'm going to mitigate, probably pull back a little bit in MyMed. I still want to make it my largest position because I'm convicted that I understand it well enough to know what those outcomes are going to lead to. But when we're coming to like the whole other revolution, the gateway that my mind opened to, realizing that there's a technological revolution that's being highly overlooked right now, and again, I'm smart enough to recognize what's going on, and I'm also smart enough to recognize that I don't understand enough to pick individual companies, that I'm going to place the bet on somebody that does, being Cathie Wood with the ARC Genomic Revolution ETF here, guys. So I would pass the question off to you. I would love to know what you think about my decision making here. What do you think about Tesla? Do you think Tesla could easily become a $2 trillion company over the next 5 to 10 years? Or do you think, like I do, that they've already priced all of that in being worth as much as like the top 5 automakers plus Uber and Lyft, likely pricing in their entire taxi network, at least for the next decade, whenever the government decides to allow it to be regulated? So these are some crazy interesting conversations. So let me know what you think in that comment section below, and I will be updating you on the ARC Genomic ETF coming down the road here, guys. I'll give you some more in-depth knowledge, so consider subscribing for that as well. But stay cool, stay awesome, and I look forward to catching you guys tomorrow.